circumstances to make martyrs of their children before they reach the age of full and legal discretion, when they can make those choices for themselves. Thank you.
Satisfied, Representative? Thank you. It's clear that this committee, not being the Judiciary Committee, will still be obliged to do some study of constitutional case law before we're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Next up is Catherine Farissa, followed by Nina Manipo, I guess. I'm not sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Fearson. I'm a naturopathic physician. I've decided after listening today to comment on some things that I have heard rather than read my written testimony. The Public Health Commissioners panel brought up statistics about measles. The commissioner mentioned a high measles death statistic in the past in the US near 500. She was incorrect. It was actually 700 and dates back to the 1950s. Statistics are powerful, but they are only valuable when viewed in context. While no death, adult or child, is insignificant, please understand that if 700 people were dying in the US each year of measles, comparatively over 2,000 children in the US die of diarrhea each year. Based upon these statistics, if measles is a public health crisis, diarrhea is relatively apocalyptic. I would like to clarify what was said by the commissioners panel about aluminum content. She quoted information about single-dose vials. Understand that single-dose vials used to be available. A parent concerned about vaccines had the option to request vials of measles, mumps, and rubella separately, the same for DTaP. These options have been completely removed from the market, and parents have no choice but to inject multiple vaccines at once. The aluminum content referenced earlier was mentioned relative to single-dose vials. The safety of aluminum in multi-dose vials has not been established. The medical community has already been abandoning unvaccinated children and expectant mothers for years. I receive weekly calls in my practice from parents who ask if I can be their pediatrician because they cannot find doctors who will take them into their practices. The doctors who you think are out there waiting in the wings to critically think for their patients and make these necessary medical exemptions do not exist. They've already checked out. Some are financially incentivized to give more shots than exemptions. I do understand the provision in the bill in the Medical Review Council, and if this bill is passed, please count me in on the record for having volunteered to participate. I hope this provides some clarity and perspective about some of the issues brought up today. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Representative Young.
Dr. Pearson, just want to thank you very much for spending some time with us today. Quality time.
And thank you.
And thank you very much for your research and everything that you do, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Representative Carpino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was one of the ones about 12 hours ago or so who asked the commissioners panel about the differences in aluminum being ingested or injected, and they indicated that they would send me some information later on, and I will hold them to that, but I'd make you the same offer if there's some additional information or a different perspective, particularly on the multi-doses. I'd ask if you would mind sending along.
Sure. Can I speak to that a little bit right now?
Absolutely.
I know it's late. I'll try to keep it brief. I do want you all to understand that children, babies, are now born with over 200 chemicals in the umbilical cord blood. So they start out with a high toxic burden. And there's no way to know how each infant or child is going to react to that small little additional amount of aluminum that they get exposed to. And there's a very stark difference in how the body processes things through our metabolism. So our body is designed intelligently to actually pass things through the liver. We go through phase 1 and phase 2 conjugation. Conjugation means the body attaches something to a foreign substance to identify it as toxic, and therefore it gets removed and eliminated from the body. When we inject things directly into the bloodstream, we completely bypass that mechanism. So there's even criticism of people who actually do nutrients, like do an IV of vitamin C, for example, because the body can't use it and metabolize it the same way that it would if you were to orally ingest vitamin C. So when you think about these aluminum quantities, we don't know what the individual child's initial starting out burden of aluminum may be, and there's certainly no pediatricians that are testing the blood levels of aluminum in children prior to vaccination, which is possible to do. So establishing quality health requirements for children prior to vaccine injection and perhaps standards around vaccines would decrease the potential for adverse side effects. Did that help?
Sure, when I replay your testimony after we've all had a few hours of sleep, it
Yes.
will make a little more sense, but it was helpful.
And yes, I'm willing to provide some of that in writing, and I can give you additional resources.
Thank you.
Representative Claritas Petrie.
Hello, thank you for your testimony. And to continue on the aluminum comment. So we don't even know what aluminum does, how long it stays in your system. Some doctors mentioned even with mercury, how long does it stay in your system? It affects everybody differently and doesn't make it to your brain and the effects it has on your whole body. And as you mentioned, depending on what's in their umbilical cord to start with, some babies could have much higher levels than others, and it could be toxic, and it could be extremely harmful to them. So there should be more studies done on everything. I feel this is really important, and we need to. It's the safety of the people and the safety of our children and babies first. And if they're healthy as babies, we know they'll be healthier as adults.
And to your point, any bacteria or viral exposure or chemical exposure is really only relevant based upon the susceptibility of the individual. Things that affect susceptibility in people when we're exposed to bacteria and viruses are everything from sugar consumption prior to and after exposure, and when trying to recover from something, vitamin D levels, nutritional status. None of those things are being evaluated when we look at the impact of vaccines on children. So the ability of a child to handle that burden is completely variable and is impacted by things that conventional medicine really doesn't look for. And so when we look at the data that's available, none of those factors are certainly being considered. And when we look at safety related to all of those things, we have to look at the aluminum, the sorbitol, all of the potential adjuvants that are being put into these vaccines. They're intentionally put in there to, pardon the expression, to piss off the body, because that's the only way you're going to mount a reaction. You're only going to stimulate the body by making it mad and getting the immune system activated. And the viruses are not always enough to do that. That's why they add that adjuvant into it. And until we really examine that and understand all the factors that go into how people react, there's no way anyone can claim safety in vaccines.
Thank you for your explanation. Thank you for your testimony and staying here until the wee hours of the morning with
And
us.
thank you all for being here and staying here in the wee hours. It's not just us.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Next is Nina. Maybe you can tell us.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Nina Manapon. I'm a mother, a naturopathic physician, and a business owner in Stamford, Connecticut. And I am urging you to please vote no to HB 5044. There is no health crisis. I am asking you to look at the implications and the detrimental effects it will have on children. What are we teaching our children when we tell them that they have no control over what is injected into their bodies? What kind of message are we sending to our children about consent and respect? You are taking away personal liberties. This is about freedom and taking a parent's right to choose what is best for their child. There is a lack of safety studies and inadequate research regarding vaccines, and whenever there is a risk, there must be choice. There are many ethical issues at hand. Doctors are being paid for high vaccination rates, and pharmaceutical companies are not being held liable for vaccine injuries. This is about religious liberties, segregating children who are not vaccinated, and dismissing parental rights. The government should not decide who medically treats my child. Is this not the land of the free and the home of the brave? I urge you to please vote no to HB 5044. If this bill passes, my family and I will be leaving the state and relocating to another state that respects religious beliefs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Representative Zupkis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming tonight. And I just wanted to make a comment that I'm glad you're here as a naturopathic doctor. And I hope that this committee looks at that counsel, if this piece of legislation moves forward, that it is balanced with naturopathic doctors and medical doctors.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? If not, again, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up is Tom Dombrowski, followed by Sandra Dombrowski.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Dombrowski, and I'm a resident of Coventry, Connecticut. I'm also a pastor with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I have a Master of Divinity degree from Andrews University and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I've been pastoring for 25 years throughout the New England area, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and now my second time in Connecticut. I have two congregations, one in South Windsor and the second in Tolland, Connecticut. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has a strong record of public engagement to promote total health. It is through that practice and with the blessings of the Almighty that our work has been able to span the globe. In addition, the official statement of the Seventh-day Adventist Church regarding vaccinations is that they place a value on them for public health. However, in that same statement, it also leaves room for individual freedom of choice. That being said, I must speak to the opposition of HB 5044 for the following reason. Seventh-day Adventists not only value personal and public health, but also the health of religious liberty. Seventh-day Adventists, through our history, have experienced religious persecution. In the 1880s, we had members who were assigned to chain gangs simply because they chose to worship on a different day than what was the common practice. HB 5044 is a law that has a specific goal to make vaccinations mandatory for students in Connecticut in both public and private schools without the benefit of religious exemption. This is unacceptable for the specific reason that it violates the free exercise clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, not to mention the Connecticut State Constitution. Of our three branches of government, it is the legislative branch that is given the specific role to create laws. Yet, the First Amendment of the Constitution states, Congress, the legislative branch, shall make no law establishing a religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. You are part of the legislative branch of the state of Connecticut. So here's my question to you. Are you prepared for the years of litigation that you will initiate with your actions this session? Proverbs chapter 24, verse 6 states, there is safety in a multitude of counselors. And so I commend you in following that counsel by allowing us to share our concerns with you. And we can counsel together on this matter. And if you just allow me to conclude, but in hearing the testimonies given today, I can only conclude that there is a great controversy brewing on this subject. And in the heart of that controversy is the call to freedom of choice. So I leave you with this question to wrestle with. Why remove the minority's rights while making a law mandatory for all in light of such a great controversy? Please vote no on HB 5044.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony. Next is Sandra Dombrowski, followed by Jennifer Benham.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. From your postures, even though you're tired, I can tell that you are still listening. You know, thank you. My name is Sandra Dombrowski, and I'm a resident of Coventry. Yes, I'm married to the last guy. we homeschool our boys, and so we really aren't going to change, our life isn't going to change if you pass this bill. And so actually today I stand before you on behalf of my neighbors in Connecticut to ask for personal freedoms, religious freedom, and as we've been hearing today, health freedom as well. And that's my plea for you. I'm not going to go into any other verbiage except for this morning. I just want to remind you of something that I heard this morning. It was from the Commissioner of the Public Health. She spoke first, and one other person. And this is what they said. The number of religious exemptions in Connecticut are rising significantly. And of course, she is supporting the bill. There's another person who presented just shortly after her. There's an 8-fold increase in religious exemptions since 2002. Now, these stats should tell you, as representatives of your constituents, that there's a growing number of your constituents that are not happy with the vaccination requirements. If there's a growing number of religious exemptions, right? This should be the canary in the coal mine for you who are representing the people. This should be telling you that something is wrong with the vaccination system. And we've been listening to reasons all day long. So I ask you to think about what you've been hearing and as you vote. Also, I'm remembering the Public Health Commissioner herself conceded that the implementation schedule should be amended and be a little more gracious in giving time. As I look at the bill and I hear all of the testimonies, I would say that the bill is not ready to go, and I would ask you to vote the bill down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. The chairs have been acquainted with the fact that there are apparently 3 families with kids asleep in one of the overflow rooms, and that overflow room is now being consolidated with the other overflow room. Security has asked us to do so. So the suggestion has been made, rather than wake the kids up, move to another room, then wake them up again when it's time to testify, perhaps we indulge and bring those 3 families forward now. I really do beg the indulgence of all those who have waited. I'm sure you can appreciate the common sense aspect of bringing them up sooner than later. I don't know if they're here yet. We will have Jennifer Bennett first, and then as soon as they're here, we will bring them in and that's all. Good? All right.
Thank you very much. I'm Jennifer Benham from New Hartford. I have a vaccine-injured child. I gave him his vaccines at 2 months of age, and he developed a little bit of eczema. The doctor told me to stop eating peanut butter. That helped a little bit. I brought him back for his 4-month immunizations. She said, oh, it's just coincidental. Eczema starts at 2 months of age. So I gave him his 4 months immunizations. And the following morning, he woke up head to toe eczema. He scratched himself until he bled. One doctor told me if I didn't put him on heavy doses of steroids, he would end up in the ICU. He became, allergic to more foods than he could eat. It took us 8 years to heal him. I'd much rather have him have a 10-week or 2-week bout of chickenpox than 10 years of itching and misery. But he's lucky because he recovered. If this were truly about the measles, a lot of people have religious objections to the rubella in the MMR. You could simply require the vaccine manufacturers to reintroduce the standalone measles vaccine. I might risk it, at least for my child that hasn't reacted yet. If there was a measles outbreak, I'm not going to risk the MMR, but I'd probably risk the measles only. You could do that. You could increase your vaccination rates for measles without a single mandate. If government can force me to inject a product I believe is morally abhorrent and medically unsafe, Is the goal of this legislation to increase vaccination rates or silence those with vaccine safety concerns? Mandates are only going to serve to weaken the public's trust of vaccines and public health policies. Do we trust Chinese statistics? Just from a public health standpoint, I already know children whose vaccine records are pure fiction. You guys will think your vaccination rates are great, but you'll have no idea what your true rates of vaccination are. It'll be anybody's guess, and you won't know who the unvaccinated kids are. There are a lot of steps that the legislator could take to increase public trust in vaccine safety and keep vaccination rates high. While it might seem counterintuitive, removing vaccine mandates, as they have done in Japan, increases public trust. I want the freedom to make my own risk-benefit assessments for myself and my children. Make vaccines that are not cultured in human tissue readily available. What kind of...
I suppose that will be a good place to end your testimony. Are there, yes, Representative Carpino.
Your testimony begs the question, so who's fraudulently altering or misstating the vaccination records that you referred to? Are these medical providers or these family members? And please don't give me a name.
No, it's anecdotal.
But you made the statement, and I appreciate you making that, but now I want to know a little bit more about what you mentioned briefly in your testimony.
Well, it's anecdotal, but I do know that there are children who look like they're fully vaccinated and they have never had a vaccine.
Do you have anything more than anecdotal?
Not that I'm willing to testify.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I believe, do I see one of the families that have been downstairs? All right, take advantage of the opportunities. Somebody with a kid. Please identify yourself. We're kind of going a little out of order here.
Dear public city, hi, my name is James. I am 9 years old. Please do not take me and my brother out of school. We want to learn more at school. We get to be creative at school. Our friends are there. We won't be able to see our friends and work with them anymore. We're very healthy. Our parents and doctors take good care of us. Please vote no.
Thank you for that. That would have been fantastic if it wasn't at 2 in the morning. Please continue.
My name is Eva Jimenez. I'm a 20-year.
Thank you for staying up so late with us and hearing our testimony. Hi, my name is Eva Jimenez. I'm a 20-year veteran teacher, daughter of Polish immigrants who escaped communism, and a parent here to urge you to kill HB 5044. This bill goes against everything I believe in and stand for. As a Master of Education with a concentration in multicultural, bilingual education, I strongly value and promote diversity in all its forms, and am committed to welcoming all students in my classroom. Even students who have been expelled from school have a right to a free, appropriate public education. The current trend toward a uniform state-sponsored health belief system that censors and oppresses opposing views and restricts our rights to an education is deeply troubling to me and dangerous to society. This bill coerces a minority group to accept medical procedures against our firmly held religious beliefs, and coercion is not consent. I heard a lot of testimony today about how people are forgetting measles, forgetting about polio, and they're relying on the herd, and they're hiding in the herd. What people are forgetting about is our hard-earned freedoms. Just over 50 years ago in Poland, my father was denied his hard-earned college engineering diploma because of his refusal to join the Communist Party. He escaped Poland and came to Connecticut, where he became a highly valued senior design analyst at Pratt & Whitney, earning 5 patents for the company. Pratt & Whitney funded his education to finally attain an associate's degree in mechanical engineering. HB 5044 would require adult breadwinners like my father to succumb to vaccination with known risk in order to attend college, jeopardizing their health and ability to care for their families, let alone attain a degree and contribute to the economy of this state. How many talented, healthy children and adults will be denied the pursuit of their dreams because we guard our health in ways more pleasing to God? A future valedictorian, UConn basketball recruit, or scientist may never realize their potential and contribution to this great state. I'd like to conclude. No one mentioned English language learners. I work with English language learners. My 2 children are English language learners. While I am allowed to teach children at school, my children would need to stay home with my husband, who is not dominant in English, and he would be responsible for their schooling, which he feels inadequate to do. And they represent many students that were not, their families were not capable of testifying for them here today. I urge you to vote no.
Thank you. Some questions? If not, thank you for staying with us for the wee hours. David, do we have one of the other?
We have the families right here.
You decide, Rick, you want to go up here?
Yeah, the little girl. You gotta get her.
Can we have this little girl first?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes. Yeah, we
Oh, these little children are awesome. Little warriors.
Hi, my name is Jolanda. I am 9 years old. I've been doing gymnastics and piano for 4 years. I definitely want to stay in school because I've been getting really good grades and want to learn more and more. I'm getting better at math and writing. I love school because I learn something new every day. I love that all of my friends are in your school, and I love my teacher. There's no reason for you to take me out of school. I think it is wrong to put something into a person's body when they refuse to. If a person does not want something injected into their body, then they should definitely not be forced to. What if I get one day, and after I get sick? Whose fault is it going to be if I get sick? I'm a healthy kid, and I am staying that way. I have the right to go to school. By the way, yesterday I should have been in school with my 2 brothers and sister, but I was protesting for what I think is right. And school is very important to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope you get some sleep before school today. There you go. Mom, make sure that you get her name to the clerk just so we have it correct. All right, who's next?
Dear members of the Public Health Committee, my name is Mia Fierro. I am 9 years old, and I am in 4th grade at Moriarty Environmental Sciences Magnet School in Norwich, Connecticut. I am asking you to please vote no to HB 5044. Reading comprehension and math have been my main 2 struggles over the last couple years. With the help of my amazing teachers and lots of hard work on my part, I have not only met but exceeded 4th grade standards. I believe that without my teachers' help, I would still be struggling. This year I joined show choir and participate in Project O Mondays after school. I love my teachers and friends and couldn't imagine not being allowed to attend school with them anymore because of my family's religious beliefs. I am a healthy kid, and I am no more of a health risk than any other child or adult in my school. Please vote no and allow me to continue to learn in the environment that I love.
Thank you so much.
Dear members of the Public Health Committee, I am writing to ask you to please oppose HB 5044. This bill will remove thousands of children from Connecticut schools and prevent thousands more from being provided the equal education they deserve. I could go on and talk to you about how vaccinating myself or my children is against my religious beliefs, but I feel that that argument, despite its legitimacy, has fallen upon deaf ears. So I would like to go about this from a different route and give you a little glimpse of what it would be like for a family like mine if the religious exemption is removed and homeschooling is our only option. I co-parent with my ex, and last session it was said several times that nobody is being forced to vaccinate their children, that we can simply homeschool. I'm not sure most legislators actually understand how difficult or nearly impossible it is for some families to homeschool. My ex and I co-parent our 9-year-old daughter together, and for us, homeschooling is anything but simple. He and I have worked really hard over the years to provide a loving and stable environment between our homes for our daughter. Co-parenting at times is about as simple as homeschooling for us, but we work really hard at it because that benefits our daughter immensely. Unfortunately, my daughter's father had a horrendous experience with being homeschooled himself. I won't go too much into detail, but I will say that when I met him as a 27-year-old adult, he could not read or write beyond an elementary level. He was homeschooled, but that went very quick.
We just want to finish your thought really quick.
Okay. So he was homeschooled, but never really taught the skills needed to be a productive adult and member of society. And for us, because of his fear, if homeschooling is the only option we're left with, although we have always made decisions together, including medical, and are on board with both agreeing that it goes against our religious beliefs to vaccinate, if homeschooling is the only option, he will want to waver on vaccines. And I will not. I will not waver. And that is likely to tear apart the amazing bond in a co-parenting relationship and land us in court in a battle over this. And for what? For what when there is no crisis? Thank you all.
Questions, comments? Not, thank you both for testifying. Moving next, please.
My name is James Irwin. I'm a 9-year-old fourth grader at Sutton's Elementary School, and my family has problems with vaccines. I read a lot, I love school, and I have strong feelings about the environment. I'm going to tell you about my brother's reaction to vaccines. Julian became very sick. He had very bad eczema and bled all over his face. Mom and Dad worked hard, and luckily before the next vaccine time, they had figured out that it came from vaccines. None of the family ever took a vaccine ever again. Now the two new babies are much healthier than me or Julian, from the simple fact that they haven't had a vaccine in their life. If you pass this law, me and my brother and sisters won't be able to go to school. This law is unfair because it puts stress on families and is just plain unconstitutional. Homeschooling puts money problems in U.S. citizens, which means lower quality food, higher stress, more illness, and more dangerous illnesses, not less. Finally, it goes against the inclusion law, which states that children with all kinds of disabilities may attend public schools, and therefore it overpowers the state law. If you pass this law, then think about the consequences. I'm only tell you about the loss you will have if you pass this law. Track. I am a good cross-country runner and I'm going to be in track. Therefore, if you pass this law, I wouldn't be on the track team, and therefore my school probably wouldn't win the championship. Environment. Most of my environmental actions are at school. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to help the environment as much. Orchestra. I have played the violin for 5 years and am in the middle school orchestra. I play for families, raising school morale. Library use. I love to go to the library, mostly my school library. If you pass this law, I would be able to go to my school library. Friendships. As a child, all or most of the friendships you make are in school. So if you pass this law, I would have way less friendships, resulting in a decrease of health, which means higher stress. Gift education. I am a good student. I'm in the gifted program and add a lot to my school. If you pass this law, everyone would lose. I will lose my school and my school will lose me. I want to fight and I will. I am armed with knowledge and ready to fight. We are not going to take vaccines because Julian nearly died because of vaccines. If this law is passed and we would homeschool, other families would move away and overall the public school would become much smaller. My parents would both lose money, so that would mean money problems for the family. Also, families with single parents would be tortured for money. Is this fair? Is this reasonable? This law should not be passed.
Thank you. Would you like to testify as well?
My name is Adrienne Irwin. I have 4 children. My oldest is 9 and testifying here with me today. I think I represent the average non-vaxxer. When my first son was born, I trusted my doctor in vaccines and he got vaccines at every appointment. But after my second son's first vaccines at 2 months old, he got an awful cold immediately. He had already had mild eczema and food intolerances, but after the vaccines, they seemed to worsen day by day. Soon I was back at my pediatrician's in tears because my son literally seemed to be falling apart. Struggling to breathe, lips and mouth blue, he was diagnosed with asthma that day. His belly button, that had been healed for weeks, now was open and bleeding again. His whole face was bleeding raw and now seemingly reacting to breast milk no matter what I ate. His eczema got so bad that we had to bind his hands at all times. If he got free in the night, I would wake up covered in his blood. I had to sleep right next to him for years so that I could catch him and stop him from scratching himself raw. I had to eliminate every inflammatory food from my diet to such an extent that I nearly starved. He was nearly 18 months old before he tolerated food besides breast milk. At 7.5, he has eczema, asthma, wide-ranging food intolerances, ADHD, and sensory processing disorder. But you're all not doctors, so what is meaningful to you? Many who support this law are not informed about how it is enforced. In other states, the elimination of religious exemption has gone hand in hand with even stricter guidelines on what qualifies for a medical exemption. My son could not get a medical exemption. None of his conditions qualify based on how this law is enforced in other states. He reacts to Band-Aid adhesive and hand sanitizer in almost every food, and yet someone besides myself and our family doctor is deciding that he can handle vaccination. Is that smart? Is it based on science? The federal inclusion law was written so that kids of wide-ranging abilities and health issues would be guaranteed the right to a free and public education. Kids with violent tendencies, other kinds of communicable diseases, they are all still guaranteed a right to a public education. And yet my son is excluded because he was born with a sensitive system and a crappy set of genetics. When I think of this law being passed, I think of one of my closest friends who had documented vaccine reactions herself as a child. She is a victim of domestic abuse, now 3 years free of her abuser, an amazing achievement. She has a 6-year-old son who is her whole world and a bunch of legal fees to protect him. My friend, she works every second. She finds jobs she can work from home that she can do when her son gets home from school, and she's off welfare now because when he goes to school, she can work. What will my friend do next year? She will not vaccinate her son, so she will move or she will go back on welfare. People who do not vaccinate are not making idle choices. They are people like me, extremely intelligent, college-educated ex-vaxxers who experience personally the effects of vaccines and who are now religiously dedicated to avoiding vaccines. My children's teachers can testify that I don't put chemicals in their bodies. My fervor extends to GMOs, pesticides, preservatives. I'm consistent in my beliefs. People like me will never vaccinate because it goes to the base of our deepest beliefs and values. I heard the state of New York right now is trying to figure out why thousands of people left New York State last year. Me and my husband laughed about how dense people are. This law will not increase vaccination rates. It will decrease the number of people in Connecticut. It will decrease the number of successful daycares, camps, and schools in Connecticut. It will put unfair pressure on the most desperate people in society, low-income single parents with kids with known health issues. Ask yourself, what is the goal? Look at the desperate faces in this crowd. Making the poorest, sickest people more desperate is not a good move for Connecticut. Do not pass this law. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Representative Hennessy.
Thank you for being here, for testifying, bring your son. Just remind you that we've had a wonderful turnout today. It's not over. It's not over.
I do really appreciate how many of you guys are still here. I really appreciate that.
So let's just keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up the first 16 hours of testimony. Are there any other families we'd like to get through here?
Hi, my name is Emma, and I don't want to get kicked out of school, of my school, because of my family's religion beliefs. The government can't make me get kicked out of school because of my religion. If you want to kick me, if you want to take the vaccines, and if I don't, I will get kicked out. Doesn't mean I will get shot. It is rude to tell us we can't practice our religion. If you kick us out of school, I don't know what is going to happen. I might never get to go to school again. I love my school. I don't want to leave. Please don't kick me out of school. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who would like to testify this morning? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm a 5th grader at Peck Montessori Magnet School in Hartford. I enjoy my friends and my teachers. I love art and music. In music, I'm learning to play the ukulele. And in art, I'm working on a poster. I had to pick a word that describes my school. I picked hope. People should be able to believe in their religion, and the government should not be able to tell them what to do, even if the government doesn't like it. If you pass this law today, you will be taking away my hope. I would like to go to an art school someday, learn about art and how to draw. I want to go to college so I can get a degree and get a good job. I don't want to be stuck in my house without any other people. I'll be lonely and have no friends. I don't want to be a lonely grandma that has 20 cats. Choosing not to vaccinate does not mean I'm sick. I feel that I should be able to go to school. If I am sick, I will stay home. It's my right to go to school if everyone else is allowed to. Do not take away my family's choice between my education and my religion. Please keep me in school. Thank you.
I'd say you'll never be lonely with 20 cats. Mom, would you like to as well?
Yes, please. My name is Mindy Profundi, and I live in South Windsor. I oppose HB 5044. I have 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 10. All 3 attend a public magnet school in Hartford. We choose the magnet school system for diversity and inclusivity, to expose my children to a community that mirrors that of the world, a socioeconomically diverse population, a population that includes people from many different walks of life, religions, races, and backgrounds. I do not teach tolerance. I teach acceptance. I teach them to embrace our differences and not fear them. Over the summer, our pediatrician's office of 8 years forced us out of the practice. We were told we had 30 days to find alternative care. We were fired. I've never vaccinated my children. Nothing has changed. I was open with my doctors regarding our religious objection from the beginning. I was always respectful, listened, and then politely refused. We were discriminated against. Today, I find myself explaining to my children their community may no longer be allowed to accept them. Their government may choose to no longer tolerate our family's religious beliefs. They may be removing them from their friends, their teachers, the world as they know it. Their future will be greatly impacted. They will be forced to homeschool. They will have no option to go to college in Connecticut. As parents, we tell our children they can be whatever they want to be when they grow up. My children will be limited. Sophia, Emma, and Miles cannot become who they dream to be if that dream includes college, not if this bill passes. This government may limit their future due to our family's religious beliefs. An additional concern for my family is in regards to my 4-year-old son. He started with birth to 3 at 18 months, receiving services through the state for his speech delays. As the years have progressed, he's needed more services. He's currently receiving occupational therapy, speech therapy, and special education through the preschool program at the magnet school. He's overcome many hurdles. Without this intervention, I am confident he would not have made such progress. He continues to need these services. Without access to the public school system, he will no longer be eligible for those services. I am asking you to tell my children, Miles, Emma, and Sophia, that their future is important, that their education is important, that they will not be excluded from school due to their family's religious beliefs. Tell them they can become whatever they dream to be. Please show them that this government and this state stands for diversity and inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? If not, we bid you a good morning.
Good morning.
I believe there may be one or two other, please.
Hi, my name is Adelaide. I'm 8 years old and in 3rd grade. I have 3 little brothers and 2 amazing parents who are smart and loving. I'm so lucky to have them. When I am sick, which is very rare, my mama and daddy keep me away from other people so I don't share germs. We always eat very healthy food, and we have 2 wise and supportive doctors. Bill 5044 would keep me and my brothers from going to school. I love my school, especially music class and Broadway club. We would miss our teachers, friends, and our fun activities. So I don't want to leave my school, and neither do my brothers. So that is why I'm asking you to please vote no and help us stand up for our rights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I think you're particularly sparkly, which is keeping us on our toes.
The one that has the power nap.
I think we could all use one of those.
Good morning. There were over 3,000 people here today in opposition of HB 5044. There are many thousands more whose civil liberties and religious freedoms and educational rights are on the chopping block because of this. These are some of the kindest, wisest, bravest, and most passionate people I have ever met. All walks of life, all ages, all spiritual beliefs, and all with their own stories as to why they want you to vote no. Unfortunately, seeing as it's 2:45 in the morning, About half of those who were planning to do a oral testimony today have already had to leave, but believe it or not, there's still half of us left who are still ready to go. So thank you for letting us kind of cut in a little bit. I actually scrapped my written testimony, and I'm just going to leave you with a few key takeaways from today's testimonies. This bill would dramatically affect the education, health, spiritual comfort, and livelihoods of so many families. There is no imminent health crisis in Connecticut or any reason for concern. Connecticut is well within the herd immunity range. Mandating vaccines will create more sickness in many other ways. Vaccines should not be a one-size-fits-all pharmaceutical product. Vaccine administration is the only medical procedure without informed consent. There have been no double-blind, placebo-tested studies for more than a few days. Vaccine inserts list hundreds of potential adverse reactions. Vaccine makers have no liability. Families are being thrown out of their doctor's offices because of their religious beliefs. When there is risk, there must always be choice. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for hearing us today and for still being with us at this moment. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. We're seeing parts of it we don't usually today. Thank you. Are there any questions? No, thanks very much. Since we're sort of in a benevolent state of mind, if there are additional families with kids who would like to come up right now.
I have a daughter, but she's opted to not go up to the platform, but is it all right if I present?
Sure.
As an oncology infusion nurse, consent is a major...
I'm sorry, could you start with your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda Decker, Norwich. Everyone needs to know that. As an infusion oncology nurse, consent is a major part of my job. Legally, the physician must inform the patients of drugs to be administered, side effects, risks, and what to expect from the cytotoxic medications being given. This must be signed and documented before I, as the infusion nurse, can order the chemotherapy from the pharmacy. Even with that informed consent, if the patient changes their mind at any time, even if the multi-thousand-dollar drug is mixed and ready to go, even if the patient changes their mind, I will not administer that drug. That is what consent means. Even without that drug, they will certainly die. Even if they are in pain and that medication may reduce their tumor, thus reducing their pain, if the patient withdraws consent, I will not administer against their wishes. If a patient with an internal bleed requires a blood transfusion to survive, yet they refuse those blood products, I will not administer those products against the patient's consent, even if it will save their life. If a patient is in the hospital and they have not had their flu shot, but they don't want it, we don't give it against their wishes. That is what consent means. Beyond medication administration, the main part of my job is inserting intravenous catheters and maintaining venous access. My hospital policy states that anyone on a heart monitor or anyone with intravenous medications requires an IV. Regardless of policy, if the patient refuses, even if the patient is confused, if they say no, they are well within their rights to refuse. Also, if I force anyone, even confused, to submit to an invasive procedure, it could be perceived as assault. I'd like to repeat that. If I force anyone to submit to an invasive procedure, it could be assault. And I refuse to do anything that would be perceived as assault. I refuse to perform an invasive procedure on a patient without their permission. That is what consent means. HB 5044, which, for all intents and purposes, stands to remove parents' last defense against forced medication administration, religious exemption, is not in the best interest of your constituents. It is in the best interest of billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies and the lawmakers to whom they financially support. Our country was formed by our forefathers on a foundation of religious exemption. The original settlers left Europe due to religious constraints. To remove religious exemption for any medication, not just vaccines, would go against everything this country stands for. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Taoist concerned with upsetting the fine balance of the internal yin and yang, or the fine balance within your body, or
Or if you're Catholic, concerned with the fact that some vaccines were created using the cells from aborted fetal tissue. It is your choice to consent or refuse any medication based on religious beliefs. That is what consent means. Please do not pass HB 5044. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you very much. Let's bring up the last mother-daughter. Oh, there's more than one? Okay. No, you're next. Good. All right, please.
Good morning. I'm wide awake. My name is Tammy Stott. I'm from Norwich, Connecticut. I am in disbelief that I'm sitting before you to oppose HB 5044, a bill that to me is both discriminatory and overreaching. 15 years ago, at the age of 19, I raised my right hand, swearing into service with the United States Air Force, where I would go on to serve honorably for 10 years. I would come to be a staff sergeant, a wife to a U.S. Army veteran and a firefighter, and most invaluable, a mother to 4 daughters. I have taken great 4 daughters, actually. I want to take a moment out because I've cut a lot of my testimony out. 2 are here with me today, my daughter Anna and my daughter Lillian. They're learning a lot today about what it means to be free, a free American. Warriors do not rest when there is a battle to be won, and they have been warriors today, and I can't be any more proud of them for that. I take great pride in raising my family here in the historic Constitution State. My children, my family are in danger on more than one ground if you pass HB 5044. We will not consent to giving up the very rights that we once righteously defended. Essentially, we will be forced into homeschooling, unprepared, our 4 children. This is by far not a choice. This bill will have severe mental impact on our healthy, thriving daughters who have known none other than attending their school and building strong lifelong bonds. It will abolish their summers in 4-H camp, a vital part of their childhood. It will segregate their participation in extracurricular activities, and it will ultimately generate financial hardship upon our entire family, as we are not too prepared to survive off of one income. I gravely fear losing our home, being able to afford food, clothing, and even health care for our children, due to the fact that we have previously been discriminated against and discarded from our family's pediatric practice. We are responsible already to pay out of pocket for alternative care. Anna 13, Lillian 8, Ella 7, and Adeline 4 deserve better than this. When I served my country, I upheld my oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Today, I ask all of you, is it not your obligation to do the same? I know you understand that. I'm just going to leave you with a quote that I picked to close out. It's from the words of John Adams, the second United States president. Power always thinks that it is doing God's service when it's violating all his laws.
Thank you. Is that it for the family?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Senator Summers.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for being here. And I do think that you are all warriors for being here at almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for spending your entire day with us. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how you phrased that you were discarded from your pediatrics practice. Did your pediatrician no longer see you because you were had a religious exemption, or could you speak more to that?
That is correct.
So the pediatrician said they would no longer see you because you were not going to be vaccinated. Is that?
Yes, that is correct. And they also told us that it didn't matter the vaccine status of any of the 4 of our children, that even if it was one child in the family, none of the children in our family could be seen.
And is that a local pediatrician in Norwich, or do you?
Well, it is local, yes, to southeastern Connecticut.
I find that extremely troubling. We're hearing that more and more and more. My husband's a clinician, and I asked him if they would not see somebody based on their religious beliefs,
pediatrician was seeing my daughter Anna when she was born and she's 13.
Okay. See my daughter.
And that was 3 years ago that they stopped seeing us.
Okay. Because there are some pediatricians that will have a special room if you're not vaccinated. We've heard in other rooms that have vaccines. But that is disturbing to say the least. I want to thank both of you for your service to our country, and what you said very much resonates with me as far as you fought for our country for the rights that we now could be possibly infringing on in this particular bill. And thank you for being here. And I can't remember what my other question was. I'm sorry. I'm sure I'll think of it after. But thank you.
Okay, Representative Pettit, fellow Representative Betts.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a follow-up to Senator Summers' question. Did they give you a reason why after 10 years the office policy changed? Was there any issue, new provider in the practice, anything that changed why after a decade they changed the office policy?
They did not, just the fact that we were not vaccinating, and that was their policy.
Representative Betts.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony and being here so late. Did you have any discussion, or did the doctor share any information with you about the vaccines and any possible pros and cons to taking a vaccine?
No.
Did you ask any questions about the vaccines themselves, or were you like a lot of parents who just say, well, what do you recommend?
No, I did ask questions about vaccines. I was hesitant about vaccines. There was really no discussion to be had. However, it was pretty much, this is what you do. If you don't get it done by this date, then it doesn't follow policy. There's just really, wish I could give you more than that.
No, that's the way it was.
What I experienced.
You know, the other question that strikes me as I've been hearing all this testimony, a lot of times if we're given either bad news or something that's really shocking, medically, a lot of people go and say, well, why don't you get a second opinion as to whether this is good or bad? Has that ever been raised by anybody in terms of the pediatrician saying no, but you're welcome to get a second opinion or a more specific explanation?
No.
So it was their policy, it wasn't anything medical or specific relating to their medical condition.
Speaking of my child,
Yeah.
we have my youngest child, my 4-year-old, at 13 months received the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, and she had a very severe reaction, extremely severe seizures. I mean, I could go on and on. You've heard it all day long. I'm not going to go on
Right.
and on
So
over
this
and
is
over
from-
again. The same things we've been hearing all day long. We had several visits to the pediatric office during that reaction time period. We went through all of that with the pediatrician, and then the end result was there would be we had to adhere to the schedule. There would be no medical exemption. All my children should remain vaccinated, to continue to get vaccinated, and actually the end result was it was a coincidence, and my daughter's reaction was viral.
Okay, so I want to try and understand this. He was your pediatrician when your 13-month-old child had some problems.
Yes.
And this is the same one when you came in again,
Yes.
knowing what happened before.
Yes, that is correct. He
Okay.
denied the medical exemption.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Cepheus.
Well, my questions were really asked. It was all about your pediatrician. So I'll just say thank you for fighting for our freedoms, and we'll fight for yours.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not? Thank you very much. Sir? Representative Hennessy?
So looking out at the crowd today, you say 4,000 face of a bill that I think is taking away fundamental rights, I think your family exemplifies what is good about America to be kind of, I don't know, modeling, but I'm so proud to see this reaction to this bill. And thank you for your service and for hanging out with your family to testify.
Senator Alwar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your testimony and thank you for your service. And as I was reading over here, the American Association of Pediatrics has a segment of American Association of Pediatrics suggests that if they have a significant proportion of patients whose families or the children are not vaccinated, that's why they're trying to get the message out to the families. And I think their concern is based on the real issue that we are all dealing with right now, is the perceived threat to immunocompromised patients. And in those practices, I think that's where they're coming from as I read what their perspective is. That's part of the challenge, and I think that's what was alluded to earlier in some of the other conversations for the people who are talking about the concerns that they have. Even the commissioner's concern was in the same vein. The challenge that this puts the families under is that some of the practices who are accepting the patients, they actually have a significantly increased number of the patients, and they figure out what is the best way forward if there's an immunocompromised patient. And the families who have immunocompromised patients or rheumatologic conditions with the patients, autoimmune diseases, they are also asking some of the practices. So this information is part of the reason we are seeing this. I think that's the pattern that we are looking at, and maybe worthwhile to have a conversation with pediatricians about what is the broader strategy, how do we take care of the community members. Now, looking at the families who have concerns about vaccines, that this community is growing, and so we will have to start to figure out a strategy from the primary care perspective or pediatric care perspective, what would be the best way forward, because walking away from them or having them walk away from you may not be the best option. And I think part of the bill today that we are looking at is looking at an opportunity for better education, clarification, and developing a strategy with the families for vaccinations or other option. I think that may be the way to do it, because right now, if a clinician has a conversation and a detailed conversation with the family about vaccines, the pros and cons, and understanding their perspective, it is literally on their own time. I think in this, we are proposing a bill which is going to make sure that the insurance industry would compensate the clinicians for the time that's going to be spent in that situation. Most of the clinicians now are employed; they are not self-employed anymore. And they're expected to see patients in 15 minutes, and you cannot do justice for such an important conversation in 15 minutes. And that's part of the struggle. So it's a number of things that have come together that is resulting in some of these efforts, but I think your message and some of the other families who have repeated this message that they are not getting the pediatrician to take care of their children is something that we will have to start to look at and identify ways to be able to fix it. Part of this bill, not the bill on the immunization, but the pediatrician one, will hopefully address that. Thank you again for your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Were you given a letter, or did they show you a letter? It wasn't clear to me earlier when you were testifying.
It was the same letter they had hanging in the office. It was an office-wide policy letter that they posted in the office. They handed it to me in the room and basically said, this is the policy we have. We've now adapted and it needs to be followed with all of our children.
You didn't happen to take a picture of that?
I didn't.
Thank you very much for testifying tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, again, thank you for your testimony this morning. Unless I'm mistaken, that concludes the junior portion of our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. One more student.
One more, okay.
School in 3 hours.
Please go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, both go on.
There's another student over there. Why don't you guys come sit up here? Two more, Judith.
Hi, my name is Gemma Peterson, and I would like to paint you a picture. You're 16 years old, you have a year and a half before you can go to college, something you've been working towards since you wanted to be a veterinarian at age 6, and you have gone your whole life without being vaccinated. You've worked really hard in your AP and honors classes to earn good grades. You take advantages of all the artistic classes offered to you by your school at Norwich Free Academy. Throughout the year, you play softball 24/7 and become a better person by training with your teammates. Coincidentally, tonight, you got cheated out of a home run and threw a girl out at second, so. Your dream is to play college ball. Your life is busy, but in your spare moments, you volunteer and make time for your family, especially your little brother, who you couldn't live without, and hang out with friends who mean the world to you. Then one day, you're told that despite all you do, all you've worked for, you are a hazard to the community. You're told that if you don't get vaccinated, everything that you have worked so hard for your whole life since you were a child is gone. So what do? You skip school, knowing that your grades will suffer, to talk in an intimidating room full of strangers and beg them. Beg them not to rip your life away from you. Beg them to understand that if you truly thought that not being vaccinated was hurting people, you would get vaccinated. Even if you thought it would hurt you, you would do it so others wouldn't be harmed, but you don't. Never has anyone around you gotten any disease or died because of you. You yourself have never gotten the flu. You got strep once, but instead of taking antibiotics, your immune system was strong enough to fight it. You do this because of this bill, because if this bill gets passed, your whole life will have been a waste. And I don't know about you, but I won't be able to live knowing that. Now look at me. As you probably guessed, I just allowed you to step into my shoes for a minute. A minute out of 16 years, that's nothing. You do not know me, and yet you want to decide what's best for me. You're doing this to tens of thousands, assuming that what's best for them. This is my life, which I only get one. This is my body and my choice. Why do we even have a constitution if these rights are not protected? What is to stop me from dealing drugs and stealing? If you don't respect this part of the Constitution, why should I respect other aspects? This is the message you are sending by passing this bill. All I'm asking is that one day I will be able to tell my children that they have a choice, because despite being 1 in 7 billion, their opinion is important to the world. Show me today, right now, that my words are not a waste, that my voice is worth something to this community. I may be young, but I am your future, and I deserve to be treated with respect. I am perfectly healthy, and I plan to stay that way. Please vote no to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
I am Dr. Kenneth Roy Peterson. I'm a chiropractor in Groton, Connecticut. I'm against this bill. Pro-vaccinators believe their adamant pro stance is based on actual knowledge and all the facts and evidence from the pharmaceutical companies and the medical world. But let's not be naive. The full truths and facts are buried, hard to find, and not being disclosed readily. If they were, then there probably wouldn't be vaccinations, and we'd all be doing everything we could health-wise through our diet, exercise, getting 8 hours of sleep, proper water, staying mentally positive, making sure our nervous system is functioning at its optimum ability, to ensure our immune system and our children's immune systems were as strong as they possibly could be, perhaps keeping us from catching those illnesses in the first place. I'm hoping that earlier all of you truly listened to those professionals who in their testimonies clearly and convincingly taught us by citing studies that there are clearly potential short-term and and long-term serious health concerns from receiving vaccinations. As a healthcare provider, I've learned firsthand from parents of children who shared with me how their child was developing normally, starting to talk, to walk, discovering the world, communicating, focusing, even telling their parents that they love them, and by giving reciprocated hugs. They were developing normally. And then it was time for that first round of vaccinations. And within a day or two, they were never the same. No longer communicating, walking, talking, focusing, playing, hugging, nor telling the parents that they love them anymore. You don't need a scientific study to know that the vaccination was the cause and that something about vaccinations is wrong. There are no ifs, ands, or buts to those parents that it was the vaccinations that harmed their children. I won't get my children vaccinated. And if you have a shred of doubt concerning the safety of vaccinations and you truly care about the safety of your constituents, you cannot in good conscience pass this bill. Please remember that you are supposed to have us, the people's best interest at heart, not big pharmas. It seems to me that the non-vaccinated are being blamed for spreading these childhood illnesses, but this has not been proven. It also seems that vaccinations, at the admission of the pharmaceutical companies and the medical world, are not 100% effective and actually are very ineffective. So some of those vaccinated still get the illness and then spread it to one another. And meanwhile, this bill is still in essence blaming the non-vaccinated for spreading it. This is ludicrous. Meanwhile, to top this all off, if I choose not to do something that I feel is potentially harmful to my children, and I don't give up my right to choose how best to take care of my children, this bill will punish my children by taking away their right to receive an education. Seriously, again, this is ludicrous. There is no debate. We have rights, and they shouldn't be taken away. Please throw this bill away.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Not, thank you very much. I believe I see one more underage person here. I'd like to put up.
Good afternoon, Public Health Committee. Hi, my name is Jacob. My earliest memories of having religious faith are from when I was 3 years old and my dad was in the army. When my dad was deployed, I would get scared and sad. My mom and I would say prayers for my dad's protection, getting to come home safely. I always learned about God and went to Christian schools even when we moved. My faith has always been really important to me. This year, I made the decision to be baptized. I am currently a student. I like my school and I work really hard. Over the past year, I've had a math tutor so I can get ahead. I want to qualify for the engineering program in high school. I have to do more work than other kids, but it's worth it because I have a goal. I want to be really good at engineering. The bill called HB 5044 would force me to decide between God and school. With all due respect, that's not really fair, and the government's power is going too far. Below are the 1st and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. These explain that I have the right to freedom of religion, and the government shouldn't interfere with that. Connecticut is the Constitution state. We have our own Constitution with extra protections for Connecticut citizens. The Connecticut Constitution starts by recognizing God. It describes the right to practice religion, receive education, and protects from discrimination and government intrusion. This means that my rights to practice religion and stay in school are really protected in Connecticut. I have the right to be a Christian, stay in school with my friends, pursue my dreams, but if you make me decide though, I will choose God. Then, what will I do? Why would you separate me from other kids? Why couldn't I go to school and follow my dreams? If you really want to protect kids, you will protect their rights to religion and education. Please vote no to the HB 5044 law. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob. Did you want to say something as well?
Yes, please. Good morning, respected members of the Public Health Committee. My name is Cheryl. I strongly oppose HB 5044 in its entirety. I am the mother of 2 school-aged children and the wife of a retired Army veteran. My husband proudly served our nation for 25 years. I and my children have also served. His military oath includes,
I will support and defend the United States Constitution. I will bear true faith and allegiance, so help me God. The military oath and mission is specifically to uphold the United States Constitution. My husband and I were born and raised in Connecticut, and upon his honorable retirement, we moved 3 times to transition back to Connecticut so that our kids could grow up with their grandparents. We have finally settled into our Connecticut home, our jobs, made friends, and the kids are in schools that they really love with amazing teachers. This bill would force our military family to violate our oath that we still uphold and our religion, or lose all of those things. It's not a choice. It feels instead like coercion and harassment. It's an abuse of power. It's a betrayal by our elected officials and a slap in the face to all of those who serve. It's mutually exclusive to our military who physically defend these rights and now risk having them taken away. HB 5044 is a gross violation of the First and 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, and at least 5 provisions of the Connecticut Constitution which very specifically protect our religious rights, our educational rights, and protect us from discrimination, and also at least 3 general statutes. Every vaccine on the current schedule is deemed unavoidably unsafe by the Supreme Court. The vaccine inserts themselves list a myriad of acute and chronic effects, including death. HB 5044 would literally mandate the potential of death. 5044 is medical tyranny, and we will not comply. When you vote, please remember your oath. Uphold the United States Constitution, the Connecticut Constitution. Have reverence for the oath and the mission of our military men and women. Vote no on HB 5044. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Representative Claire Destine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony today. Thank you for your family's service, your husband, and the sacrifices you've made for our country, and we all appreciate that. I find, even though I'm opposed to this legislation, I find it appalling that this new legislation would make people that are already in the queue, that are not getting vaccinated, that are in school, not able to go back to school.
Yes, ma'am.
We've heard many people talk about that are juniors in high school, that are going to college in another year and a half, that would have to leave their high school.
Yes, ma'am.
Be homeschooled. Parents will have to lose their jobs to be able to, it's very upsetting that that's what this bill is going to do to these people. But I appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there any other young people who need to, I think that's it. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to the list. Christine Wojale. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christine Wojale. My 2 children, excuse me, are education refugees from New York and currently attend private school here in Connecticut. I sat on my computer for hours trying to think of something compelling to say that would convince you to vote no on HB 5044. After all, I've been through this before. I could share my spiritual beliefs and concerns about the ethics of using cell lines from aborted fetuses and the manufacture of vaccines, but you would produce statements of support by religious leaders and state that protecting public health trumps my religious beliefs. I could state my concerns about the lack of vaccine safety studies and provide peer-reviewed journal articles supporting my concerns. You would respond that all the major health authorities dispute this and repeat the mantra that vaccines are safe and effective. I could tell you that I am able to have simultaneous concerns about the compatibility of vaccines with my religious beliefs and concerns about vaccine safety. You'd pass judgment without any spiritual authority to do so and put my testimony in the doesn't have a sincere religious objection to vaccinations pile. I could tell you about the irreparable harm my children suffered when they were thrown out of their schools in New York and the special education services my daughter lost. You would tell me that it was my choice. I could tell you about the profound anxiety my children feel as they await word about whether or not they will be kicked out of yet another school and lose yet another set of friends. You tell me to just homeschool like it's no big deal. I could remind you that Believe Women became the rallying cry for the Me Too movement and calls for the end of casting doubt on women's accounts of rape and sexual assault. And then I'd point to the tens of thousands of women around the world who witnessed their children's vaccine reactions and injuries. You would dismiss their experiences as coincidence because the health authorities said so, without any medical basis for making such determinations. I could point out the hypocrisy of some legislators as they fight to preserve the rights of women to have an abortion while simultaneously attempting to take away a mother's right to decide what is injected into her child's body. A yes vote will cause irreparable harm to our children. The tide of public sentiment on this issue is turning in our favor, and our numbers are growing. You have your vaccine mandates to thank for that. But make no mistake, we are entering an era of liability. We will no longer accept anything less than full informed consent, vaccine choice, and liability for manufacturers and pushers of vaccine mandates. Don't be like California Senator Richard Pan. Be like New Jersey Assemblyman Jamel Hawley. Be on the right side of history. Please vote no on HB 5044. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much. Oh, Representative Henderson.
I just want to thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Next we have David Conley, followed by Barbara Rudini.
Hello.
Hello.
David Connolly, Bristol, Connecticut. In 1802, President Jefferson said to the Danbury Baptist Association in Connecticut, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." How our founding fathers felt about religion and the state is very important when confronting the reasons used to justify removing a protected right. An example I often hear is that there's been a spike in the number of religious exemptions claimed. So basically, we must take away a protected right because people are actually using it, which of course makes no sense. The point of protecting a right in the first place is so that it can be used. Another one is, we believe that people aren't being honest because the most popular religions are okay with vaccines, so they must be lying. The hubris displayed by removing a natural right because you think that some people might be lying is astounding. There is absolutely no proof of this. I have read several news articles with titles like, "The Catholic Church gives green light to vaccines," or something similar. This is not true, and I will explain that using excerpts from the only teaching on vaccines to come from the Vatican, called "Moral Reflections on Vaccines Prepared from Cells Derived from Aborted Human Fetuses." Quote, "They should take recourse, if necessary, to use the conscientious objection with regard to the use of vaccines produced by means of cell lines aborted human fetal origin." Quote, "Equally, they should oppose by all means the vaccines which do not yet have morally acceptable alternatives." Quote, "There remains a moral duty to continue to fight and to employ every lawful means in order to make life difficult for the pharmaceutical industries which act unscrupulously and unethically." And as explained by the National Catholics Bioethics Center, unfortunately, at present, there are no alternative vaccines available in the United States against rubella, varicella, and hepatitis A. All of these are grown in cell lines WY38 or MRC5. This is not a green light, but a call to action to hold accountable pharmaceutical companies, legislators, and the media. It never gives permission for the removal of religious exemptions at all. In fact, the language uses phrases like, could permit parents to, or have a duty to take recourse. This appears to promote choice, not government control. Kicking children out of school is not a choice parents are making. This bill proposes to withhold from parents a right that is already protected in Connecticut. So the question I pose to you is, if the Roman Catholic Church sees fit to give its members the benefit of choosing what is best for their children, even with the questionable moral implications of abortion-related chemicals, why is the government trying to take that choice away? And in conclusion, sorry, a little dry. A joint statement by the Connecticut Catholic bishops on vaccines dated January 28th, signed by the Archbishop of Hartford and the bishops of Norwich, Bridgeport, and Stamford. The Connecticut Catholic Conference, our public policy office, stands as a defender of religious liberty for all. In general, the conference maintains that all religious exemptions should be guarded jealously. End quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Yes. Representative Terziak.
Thank you very much. Is that the same statement that you referenced from the Catholic bishops, where they said that the Catholic Church does not make a stand does not ban vaccines? I think that was part of the statement also.
It was, yeah. I have.
And is that the same statement where the bishops pointed out that every Catholic school in Connecticut requires children to get their vaccines, even the ones you complain about come from aborted cells?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Correct, yeah. In fact, all of the excerpts in my statement, which are in the one I sent to you, which is even longer than the one I read to you, all have links to the full documents of everything that is quoted in here.
Thank you. That would be from the Catholics who require children to get all
Catholic schools.
That would be from the Catholics who require all children to be vaccinated in order to enroll in their schools.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Right. And don't forget to defend religious exemption jealously.
To be vaccinated to go to
religious exemption, sir. It's very clear. Anything else?
I get to say that.
I'm sorry.
Representative Terziak, were you finished? Yes, I am. Thank you. Representative Candeloro.
I want to thank you for your testimony and making that point. I think what gets confusing about the Archbishop's letter, and I think the news has reported the first part, which talks about the church itself doesn't have an objection, but they support the defense of religious liberty.
Correct.
And so I think, well, my understanding is Catholic schools certainly allow for the vaccinated children to attend. They also accept people submitting religious exemptions.
Correct.
In order to attend. They don't reject students who are exercising a religious liberty to attend a Catholic school. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony. Next we have Barbara Rudini. Welcome.
Hello. I represent approximately 3,700 children who are immunocompromised in Connecticut who have PANDAS and PANS. In terms of the medical exemption, I already have a team of physicians that are experts in my child's condition and that are dedicated to my child's care. The government assigned experts are not our experts, so I truly oppose anything to do with medical exemption, any statutes regarding it. In terms of the conversation with parents and having the ability for them to bill insurance, I think they should be paying the parents for the conversation, and I would only allow a conversation that actually talked about immunity and things that are proactive to help the child and not just about immunizations, so other options for the parents. And another point is my child is a medical exemption, but vaccines are also being pushed on the immunocompromised, so this definitely applies to me. And I thank all of the committee members that I actually have met with, so they know my story and they know that I have a very serious immunocompromised child, so it's a big deal. The immunocompromised are excluded from press conferences, so I appreciate the opportunity to discuss why eliminating the religious exemption would do nothing to protect our kids or anyone in a school or any setting now or in the future. I did arrange to meet with Representative Ritter back in October with another mom to discuss actual measures that would be beneficial to our kids and all kids in a school setting. He's been vocal for many years regarding his stance on the religious exemptions and his concern for the immunocompromised. Yet, we were the first parents that he said he has said that he has ever met with. That was a little bit, I was taken aback by that. We discussed the risks of shedding by live virus vaccines and how our kids are actually advised to avoid the vaccinated. One of his staff members chimed in and said, yes, we've come across that situation when teachers are going through chemo, so they are aware of that situation and that risk. He stated his opinion that most parents are purchasing their medical exemptions. And as a person who has a medical exemption, it was very hard, and I have a team of doctors, so that statement was really disconcerting. So is he truly concerned about our fragile children is the question. He also said he was in the process of updating their infectious disease manuals to kind of, update their protocols. One ironic thing was I was actually testifying yesterday for a bill on the Children's Committee for Pandas and Pans to mandate insurance to pay for treatments for our children. So I spoke to that yesterday. And one of those treatments is an IVIG. It's an immune globulin product. My daughter had 32 of those. And if I could just finish the irony of that statement. So today I'm here to oppose this bill because the more vaccinated there are, it actually compromises that product because the donors that are needed for that product, the best donors are the unvaccinated because the antibodies last a lifetime, whereas studies are showing more and more that the antibodies from the vaccinated, they wane. So that product is actually going to be compromised, and the irony of this is it's going to actually hurt the immunocompromised in the end. So that's
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Jean Higgin. I'm sorry.
Hi, first I want to thank you all for being here. It's really nice to see all of your faces here, and we really appreciate your hearing us. My name is Jean Wiggin. I'm from West Hartford. I'm here to oppose HB 5044. Over and over, I've heard people stating that one cannot hold deeply held religious beliefs opposing vaccines and question the safety in science. Are your reasons for opposition usually singular, or are they multifaceted? 7 years ago, my baby had a respiratory reaction to his 4-month vaccines. He started wheezing shortly after, and it continued for months. Following his reaction, I threw myself into research. I discovered that my son's respiratory reaction was a side effect of the DTaP vaccine listed in the insert. I learned that human diploid cells are used to make vaccines and that remnants enter our bodies along with DNA. Fast forward to the spring of 2019. My older 2 children go to sleepaway camp. 6 weeks before my 14-year-old was set to go, we received an email stating that the camp would not accept his religious exemption. Stunned, I set to work to secure a medical exemption, which I was sure he qualified for, having had multiple vaccine reactions. My son was jaundiced, had gastrointestinal issues, acid reflux, eczema, food allergies, colic, neurological effects, migraines, chronic illness, and a buildup of extraaxial fluid around his brain. Extraaxial fluid is a protective layer between the brain and the skull. If the filtration system isn't working properly, a buildup will ensue, putting pressure on the brain. In his case, his body was developing, 10th, 15th, 20th percentile, and his head was in the 80th, 90th, 100th percentile. So they did a ultrasound. I drafted a 6-page report. I jumped ahead. So I wanted to earn him a medical exemption, so I drafted a 6-page report for my pediatrician. Despite supporting me, his pediatrician could not provide an exemption. He did not qualify under the CDC's narrow list of contraindications. Ultimately, my son was granted an exception to go to camp for 1 summer, his last as a camper, based on a conversation with his pediatrician about his medical history. Those 5 weeks were probably the worst of my life. It was my faith that carried me through. While I was aware of my son's vaccine reactions, it was devastating to scour his medical records and see the overwhelming correlations. The guilt was indescribable. I prayed for guidance and for strength. I prayed to God for forgiveness for unknowingly bringing harm to my children. This legislation aims to impart that same pain tenfold. It will force segregation on my family due to our religious beliefs and duty to protect our children from further harm. We will have to choose between upholding our religious beliefs and keeping our children safe or risking their health. We will be forced to homeschool and send our high schooler to boarding school or move out of state away from grandparents, family, and friends and everything we have known. Lawmakers, please hear me. Hear me as a mother. Hear the pain in my voice. Hear the hours of tears I have shed. Hear the guilt I carry for unknowingly bringing harm to my children. Hear that my children are immunocompromised, indicated by their vaccine reactions. Please, I am begging you, oppose HB 5044. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here so late.
Next is Jessica Tanton. Jessica? Madison Ramsey? Madison Ramsey? No? Tammy Anne Marie Gianni. Jennifer Feinbrick. She's gone. Ellen Barrett. Isabel Minozzi.
She left as well.
Thank you. Imani. Can't read her
Gone.
last name.
She's left.
Thank you. Julia Tersolini. I'm just wondering, are there still people downstairs who are waiting to testify, not who are just happen to be here, but are there people downstairs waiting to testify?
There's a whole overflow room of people waiting to testify still.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if it makes more sense if we just have people start coming in here.
I can go get them. Certainly.
I've been hoping to hear you. Okay, I'll just keep going through the list. I'll just keep going. I thought it'd make it easier, but it doesn't look like it's going to. Anita Kosaba.
Anitra Kosaba.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in the wee hours. My name is Anitra Brooks Kosiba. I'm a resident of Greenwich, Connecticut. I was here earlier with my husband and 2 boys, Saffron, who's 11, Indy, who is 7, and they are now home asleep. They stayed here as long as they could. I am an educator, a performing artist, mother of 2, who attend public schools in Greenwich, Connecticut. I oppose House Bill 5044 and respectfully request that you further review its impacts
and unintended consequences. I am African American. I am a woman. I am Muslim. This bill directly targets my intersectionality. The negative consequences of having my parental rights and religious freedom removed will fall heaviest on me and other women of color. This bill discriminates against low-income families who, when faced with the inability to exercise their religious freedom, will not be able to afford to relocate or to homeschool their children. If those families cannot move or homeschool, they would be forced to violate their deeply held beliefs to comply with this bill. How is it fair that an affluent family would not have to face the same ethical dilemma? This burden must not be thrust upon us by those who represent us. Not only does this bill impact my children's education, my parental rights, and my family's ability to practice our beliefs, it is also a violation of our personalized health care and body autonomy. My children happen to be vaccinated, but that happened at my discretion. The Connecticut Constitution guarantees me this freedom, as well as a free and appropriate education for my children. Those rights must continue to be protected. The current system is working. There are already measures in place to protect Connecticut citizens in the event of an outbreak that do not include stripping parental rights and removing healthy children from school. Please vote no on HB 5044. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments? Senator Summers?
Yes, good morning, and thank you for your testimony. I agree that when you look at this from a different perspective, this bill could hurt those who are at the lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Where if you have money and wealth, you can choose to send your child to boarding school or be able to homeschool your child, where you're not reliant, if you're a single mother, or not reliant on two incomes. One of the things that has come up is that if you are on state insurance and you have to use an in-network pediatrician, and that's the only pediatrician available to you, but that pediatrician is now not taking you because you are asking for a religious exemption, we are actually preventing access to health care. And that's something that hasn't been brought up
That's right.
before. And especially if you are someone who needs help with the state insurance, that puts you in an even more compromised situation. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, if we're going to look at having consent more fully informed, where a clinician has to have a conversation with the patient, perhaps documented on vaccines, should we also consider having the clinician disclose what they're paid or what bonus or quality bonus they're given for X number of vaccines administered to a child? I think that's a conversation that we need to also include for full disclosure. And I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that as far as the in-network being on state insurance.
I think we would all love to know what those financial incentives are. I am on state insurance, and my my access to pediatricians is restricted. In fact, to all of my medical providers. And so your question was, would I like to see if there are financial incentives there based on?
Well, we're talking about disclosure of consent and having more and more consent. We also have heard from different patients of pediatricians, and you can read it online, that they are incentivized through insurance companies for quality care, that after X amount of vaccinations that are administered, there's an X amount of dollars paid.
Right.
So there is, you can go on and you can look at it. Each insurance company has their own thing. But we're now hearing stuff that we haven't heard associated with vaccinations. We've heard today that, and in testimony that's come in, that insurance companies will no longer reimburse doctors if they are taking insurance companies are now offering a bonus for X amount of vaccines administered through the pediatrician. Also going to the fact that now pediatricians, we're seeing more and more. I just got another email here about 4 different pediatric offices this one person went to on state insurance, and they were rejected from those offices because they decided to not vaccinate. So I think there's a much bigger picture and a much bigger story that we need to look at. And I want to see if you were on state insurance, did you have that same issue where you're forced to have an in-network doctor, you don't really have a lot of choice,
Yes.
and they decide that they're not going to see you or they're getting rid of you as a patient because you're not complying with vaccines. Where do you get your health care?
That's a good question.
Do you go to the ER, the most expensive point of call?
Right.
Or, so those are all unintended consequences.
Right, I agree.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for
Next
being here.
we have Stephen Schmalhofer.
He went home.
Boana Staley, Jennifer Brown, Melanie Maurice, Tatiana. Yes.
I think she left.
Okay. I thought you were her. Jennifer Smith. Welcome.
Members of the Public Health Committee, thank you so much for staying to hear my testimony at 3:40 in the morning. My name is Jennifer Smith. I am 28 years old, and I have nearly everything a person could ever want. I have a master's degree, a full-time job, a house, and a happy marriage. I say nearly everything because I lost my health and my ability to bear children. When I was 17, I was coerced by my doctor and a very manipulative and misleading television advertisement to go get the Gardasil shot. I remember my mother telling me it was too new. I remember feeling uneasy about it. I remember my friends experiencing bizarre symptoms after their shots. I remember I ignored all of this, and I took the advice of my pediatrician and of that sly commercial telling me I could prevent myself from getting cancer if I just ignored my mom, my gut feeling, and my friends' adverse reactions. After all, I was told Gardasil was safe and effective and thoroughly tested. I was told this vaccine would prevent me from a potentially deadly virus I could contract if I ever wanted to someday have sex. So I lined up like a good little patient and received all 3 rounds of the Gardasil vaccine. What I don't remember was my doctor having a discussion with me regarding the risk the shots themselves could pose. I don't remember being offered the vaccine insert to analyze prior to making a decision, and I don't remember my doctor informing me of its chemical makeup. I don't remember this because this conversation never happened. If it had, I know I would have made the decision not to undertake Gardasil's risks. If I had only known what I know now, I may not be sitting before you as a 28-year-old postmenopausal woman. Postmenopausal. I have only recently learned that Gardasil has never been evaluated for genotoxicity and that its ingredients include possible carcinogens, including DNA fragments, according to the FDA. The placebos that Merck claims to have used in their shady clinical trials were not true placebos, but solutions containing substances such as aluminum, a known neurotoxin, borax, which is banned by the FDA in food products, and polysorbate 80, which in rodent studies causes primary ovarian failure, yet has never been independently safety tested in human vaccines. Polysorbate 80 opens channels into the brain through which it and other toxic elements can enter. In Gardasil's clinical trials, 2.3% of girls became ill with autoimmune diseases within 6 months. As an 11th grade AP statistics student, I would have understood this to mean that I was about to take a substance that had a 1 in 40 chance of giving me a lifetime disability in an attempt to reduce my 1 in 43.5 thousand chance of dying from cervical cancer, and I would have thought this was stupid. I also didn't know that if I ended up developing a lifelong disability, I couldn't sue the manufacturer. I wasn't told any of these things, most likely because my pediatrician did not even know these things herself. It was not explained to me that about 98% of all HPV cases clear themselves, and that routine pap smears and early intervention could reduce the risk further. Although I can't go back and undo what I consider to be the worst mistake of my life, I at least can still have the right to refuse to be exposed to additional toxic components of vaccines, and I will continue to fight for this right because my body cannot afford any more exposure to the toxic elements contained within vaccines.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there.
Okay, I'll just conclude by asking. I want to say that science has never settled. In my experience, it's proof of this. So I asked the members of the audience to quote that manipulative commercial I saw when I was 17 years old. Moms, dads, did you know? Maybe you didn't, but you do now. What will you do about it? Thank you. Jennifer Smith, Coventry, Connecticut.
Thank you. Hold on 1 minute, please. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up is Laura DiMinizio. Oh, thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Laura DiMinizio from Waterbury, Connecticut. Everyone has already made every point that was in my testimony, so I'm going to take it in a different direction. I'm going to talk to you about what can come of this bill if it passes, kind of in the vein of discrimination. So my daughter started kindergarten this year, and she started it at the Catholic school that we have been in for 3 years because we have 4 children, ages 6, 5, 4, and 2. And on the Friday night before school was starting on Monday, I got an email from the Archdiocese telling me that she was not going to be allowed in school because they don't accept religious exemption. And I said, well, that's against Connecticut state law. Luckily, I have really good access to lawyers through this amazing tribe that I've become part of. And they told me over the weekend, don't come to school on Monday. Well, I don't really do well when people tell me what to do, and I know it's wrong. So we brought her to school on Monday morning, marched ourselves into that parking lot, and we were asked to go to the main office. And I had taken my daughter to her class, left her with her teacher so that we could deal with this in private, and they told me I had to take her. And so I went over, I said, Mags, we're just gonna go to the front office just for a little bit. And as we walked to the front of the building, she looks at me and she says, am I gonna get to go to school? And I said, don't worry, we're gonna figure it out. And we did figure it out, and she's a happy kid in kindergarten. But from that situation that presented itself as we're sitting there by ourselves while every other kid is getting to start the school day in a big, huge school meeting on the blacktop, you know, it's a small school. Other parents saw us. And so a few days later, there ended up being posts on Facebook. I don't know if you guys hang out on social media and see some of the really nasty comments that come at people who want to be pro-informed choice. But 2 mothers, they didn't put our names in it, but it was about our family wanting to really make a move to get us removed. They called the Archdiocese. They wanted us removed from the school. They wanted to bring it up at a PTA meeting. They got other people from the school to comment on their post and say, yes, that my healthy daughter should be removed because she might infect a child with an illness she doesn't even carry. So that's just, you know, I just think this bill, if it goes through, it's going to be obvious the kids that are leaving school probably because they have a religious exemption, and that's just going to open the doors so much more for these really nasty comments that come out on social media and even maybe in person and who knows what else. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Megan Belval.
Yeah.
Tom Fromson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Megan. I didn't see you. I apologize. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm Megan Belval, members of the Public Health Committee. I urge you to vote no on HB 5044. I'm a mother of 3 teenage children who attend public school in Connecticut. I'm also an attorney with years of experience working with FDA-regulated products, having worked at both FDA and the industry. I had no reason to doubt vaccines when my children were born. I fully vaccinated them through their infant and toddler years. As dark circles started to appear under their eyes, words and focus disappeared, loss of appetite, sensory issues, monthly ear infections, strep, MRSA, scarlet fever, pandas, croup, respiratory infections, and more plagued them constantly. I lived at the pediatrician's office. It was a gradual poisoning and an insidious decline, and I didn't make the connection of these issues to their vaccines until my daughter, who was a toddler at the time, could no longer walk immediately after her MMR vaccine. I remember frantically calling my doctor in tears, asking if this would be permanent. Thankfully, that symptom eventually went away, but there were others that remained, and that was the last vaccine I ever gave. I dove into the science about vaccines and their ingredients, and my research revealed to me that injecting vaccines into my children violated my religious beliefs. Over the next decade, with intensive recovery protocols, I detoxed them from the heavy metals and other neurotoxic chemicals injected into them from their vaccines. And they are now healthy, thriving, and focused in school, sports, and other extracurricular activities. This specious bill is not about health. There is not a shred of evidence that my healthy children or unvaccinated children are a danger to anyone. There is no deadly disease epidemic, and there has not been one in the past 60 years that this religious exemption has been in place. We cannot pass laws based on irrational fear and unsupported theories about the future. This bill is not just about tolls or plastic bags or energy drinks. It targets and discriminates against a minority population, forcing them to homeschool or move out of state to be afforded a public education. These students will be effectively segregated from their community, considered too dangerous and diseased to continue to attend school with their friends and classmates. Imagine how traumatic this would be to a teen who has spent the past decade with the same friends working to build an academic, sports, or music career to prepare for college. Can I have one more closing sentence?
Yes,
if you believe in justice, religious freedom, equal protection, and my body, my choice, please ask yourself if this bill fits those basic principles that you support. The tide is turning. Many states are now raising bills which are criminalizing vaccine mandates and requiring proper safety studies for all vaccines. Please be on the right side of history and oppose this despicable and discriminatory bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. Tom Fromson? No. Jennifer Schaefer.
That's me.
My 28 years of being here in Connecticut, being active and coming up to the Capitol for various different causes. I've never been here at 4 a.m., so bear with me. I'm going to talk about Merck, the makers of Vioxx. Merck, the manufacturers of Verifax. They're being Merck. The Merck Verifax vaccine injured my child. I'm not anti-vaccine. My children were vaccinated. Okay? Not with all the vaccines. I decided with my family and my doctor which vaccines were right for us. So we did the chickenpox vaccine. The greatest regret, right? So Merck is being sued for fraud for Zostafax. That's the adult shingles vaccine. Zostafax is not covered under the 1986 Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. Zostafax is about to be taken off the market as hundreds of people sue Merck. My child was injured by a Merck vaccine. I just want you to hear that. Merck, the makers of Vioxx. Why on earth would you force your constituents by withholding a public education from their children and force them to take a product from a company like Merck? Let me also just say this. Merck is being sued for fraud for the mumps portion of the MMR. There are over 11,000 outbreaks and cases of mumps in this country. Go look on the CDC website. There was just some mumps cases here in Connecticut. Where is the media? Where is the outrage? What laws we need are to rein in the pharmaceutical companies. What laws we need is choice with vaccines, because if you pass this law, you're going to force us or have our children be taken out of school because there's no other place to get the measles vaccine. What if we don't want the rubella portion, like someone else said here earlier? What if we don't want the mumps because it's fraudulent? 2 virologists have whistleblower protection. This court case has been going on since 2009. Go try and read about it because they have it all locked up legally, right? But it's happening, and it was just proceeding forward. Lots of discovery going on. This is what tort law does. Tort law protects us from bad products and bad companies like Merck, the makers of Vioxx. Merck, the makers of Zostafax. They're being sued for fraud for Gardasil. They're being sued for vaccine injury for Zostafax. They're being sued for fraud for the mumps portion of the MMR. Merck, the makers of Vioxx. Why would you put your constituents in a position to either forego a public education, which is a right? We are the Constitution state. I love Connecticut. I'm going to stay here and fight, but my husband and I talk often about leaving this state if this continues.
I'm going to have to stop.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you for being here. I want to say just this one last thing, okay? I've been following many of the states with this legislation happening. I want to say that I'm so thankful to all of you, even the ones that I've interacted with that I don't agree with. I just want to say thank you because you're all here. I want to say thank you for allowing us to testify because in California they didn't. Thank you. Please kill this bill.
Are there any questions? Hang on 1 second. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much. Joan Roche.
She's not here. That's my mom. She left.
Okay. Anthony Acutella.
I think you were.
Okay.
You go next.
Sorry. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Dr. Anthony Anello. I'm a physical therapist. I have a broad education from neuroscience, pathophysiology, cardiopulmonology, pediatrics, geriatrics. I'm a craniosacral therapist. So, I'm against this bill, and it's pretty obvious why. I'm talking about it all day. You guys have been listening enough. Appreciate your attention. The vaccine schedule has gotten out of control. All right, it's increased sixfold since 1980s. Okay, a kid is going to get 72 shots. I got about 12. By the age of 1, a kid is going to get a baby, a child, a 12-month-old. He's going to get 25 shots. That's 2 times more than what I got my whole life. You can only poke and prod and inject the body so long before it starts to break down. And this is what we're seeing, and it's obvious. We're very sick. I see it all the time. I work mainly with geriatrics, but I have exposure with a lot of neuro disabilities as well. Moving on. I gotta speak up for our little ones because there's a great injustice being done to them, and it's serious. Hepatitis B vaccine is dangerous, and hepatitis B is transmitted through sexual contact, and
only intravenous injections, so drug use. Okay, if mom has it, she can be screened prenatal with great prenatal screening. She can be screened, and then the baby can have precautions. This is a benefit of having the vaccine, is when we know that the baby needs it, they can have it. But other than that, we're injecting this baby with 10 to 15 times the amount of FDA guidelines for aluminum. Aluminum is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It is a lipid. It breaks down the lipids in the body. So what it does is it affects the membranes in the body. You've got the blood-brain barrier, and if the blood-brain barrier is getting damaged and aluminum is getting in there, your nervous tissue is extremely delicate, and the cerebrospinal fluid only flushes out the toxins very slowly, if at all, if it hasn't settled into the brain. So we're literally pumping 10 to 15 times what's recommended. What's a safe amount of aluminum to have in the blood? 0. Okay, so we're giving ourselves a little leeway here, but this is all at once. It's staying in there, and then we're doing it 3 times by 6 months, and then we're also recommending Tdap for pregnant women. That's nuts. That's nuts. It goes right through to the baby, and this is a developing fetus. That's dangerous, and they don't even have this disease. Same with hepatitis B. It's too much, and then they're getting pumped, and then at the 12-month mark comes the MMR vaccine. So they are so immunocompromised from all this. It's too much for their little systems, and we're poisoning our next generation, and it's unnecessary. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Representative Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I'm sorry to ask, what is your background, if I may ask?
Physical therapy, just education-wise, or it's a doctorate of physical therapy, so it's a broad spectrum.
Okay, no, thank you. And thank you for your insights. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony. Tim Sparks.
Good morning. I'm Tim Sparks. I'm a citizen of Portland, and I'm here to oppose Bill HB 5044. You know, most everything that I would want to say has already been said like 15,000 times, so I won't go through all my objections because I pretty much concur with what most people have said about, you know, the constitutionality of this law and all the aspects medically, scientifically. And I think the comments I would have is there's a lot of people here today. There's a lot. And we've been, you know, streaming, broadcasting live. You know, it's really amazing that people from all over the country are watching what we're doing here. And one of the comments that I do want to mention is they're very appreciative of what we're doing here in Connecticut in this as actually listening, because in other states they weren't doing it. They were dismissing, not allowing testimony. So I just want to express that appreciation for everybody here still, you know, listening. And just that, you know, all these people are coming here to get to address the government, which is a constitutional right. I appreciate that process. You know, and I just, you know, want to say that you know, a lot of all the questions that seem to be raised about why this bill is here, that people are maybe fudging their religious exemption. It's a growing concern. And all those things, I think that the question that needs to be asked is, why is this number growing? Why are people refusing this wonderful product? If it's truly effective, or if people are just not really getting hurt by it, why are they coming here and saying that? I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And please don't tell me that it's Russian bots, because if I hear that one more time, that we are being educated by Russian bots, I think that's a very big insult. Adam Schiff is you know, brought that to, and wants Facebook to censor all information. It's terrifying. And you know, so these are so un-American concepts that are happening nationally.
much. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. Next is Alexander Eisman. Julia Nadeau. Jim Muir. Okay. Jackie Latch.
Hi, I'm Jackie Latch. I'm from Newington. I'm here in opposition of HB 5044. My biggest concern is it's completely unconstitutional. The government was designed on freedom to include freedom of religion, and HB 5044 is a smack in the face of our founding fathers and my beliefs. To threaten the removal of free education is segregation, and we as Americans need to do better. Connecticut needs to be better. What I want to share with you today is the impact that this will have on my family. I'm the mother of 2 children. I have a 2-year-old. She is a very lively girl, very bright. Every morning she gets herself dressed and puts on a backpack and tells me that she's going to school. And I have to remind her that she's only 2 and she doesn't go to school yet. It'll break her heart if I ever have to tell her that she will never get to go to school. My son is 4, he's in preschool, and recently he was diagnosed with autism. He is doing amazing in his classes. He is in a preschool that does provide special education, which has done so much for him. If his education goes well, he will become a contributing member of society. He's a very hands-on kid. He can build, and he knows how everything moving functions. Homeschool will never be enough for him. And the financial burden of the special help would be too much on my husband and I. HB 5044 will strip him of his future. It will remove the option of trade school. Is the state ready for another financially dependent citizen that you can prevent by providing an education? We would be forced to leave this state. You actually heard my boss speak earlier, and she'll be closing her practice here in the state if this bill passes. So on top of my kids getting kicked out of school, I will also be losing my job. So what would keep me here? My children are very healthy. We live in a house where we barely ever have sickness. We have that day we're like, oh, I think my kids are getting sick, and the next day, they wake up perfectly fine. Their immune systems are strong. How is segregating and sacrificing the future of perfectly healthy children a good representation for Connecticut? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. Next up is Anthony Ianello. Oh, you do. Oh. Okay. Aaron McNamara. Followed by Colin McNamara. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm Erin McNamara, and I am from Manchester, Connecticut. If we, as Americans, truly believe every person is created equal, then we should adhere to the concept that every life carries equal importance, and that differing ideas born from these differing lives can be heard and will be protected under our First Amendment. In that amendment, you'll find the statement that Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. The proposed bill of HB 5044 directly prohibits the free exercise of one's faith and one's personal freedoms. HB 5044, as we've heard many times this evening and yesterday and this morning actually, is a multi-pronged issue that infringes on the religious beliefs of many people present here today, not because of a puritanical idea of predestination,
but because they can test the presence of aborted fetal tissue and animal byproduct used in the formulation of vaccines. And it infringes on our personal freedoms by forcing parents to adhere to a one-size-fits-all approach to medical decisions, setting a dubious precedent as the institution of HB 5044 will target children with unknown underlying sensitivities to vaccine ingredients. Adverse reactions can be something mild, as an inflamed injection site or a low-grade fever. But for some children, we've heard many accounts from parents whose children develop seizures. And for other people, those reactions are deadly, which are clearly stated in any vaccine insert. Are the lives of children and people who are vaccine injured, or who have differing beliefs on when life becomes life, worth less? Are we to play a game of roulette with our children to satisfy a greater good that has yet to be defined, given a lack of double-blind placebo testing on vaccines with the current schedule? HB 5044 will prove to be destructive for single-parent households who have thus far chosen a delayed or piecemeal vaccination schedule, who cannot afford to homeschool, for families who will not be granted medical exemption because their first child's adverse reaction was not serious enough, and others who simply follow the status quo and will have to watch their child change overnight. Moreover, we created a government in this country that is supposed to uphold our inalienable rights, preserving a free-thinking society. HB 5044 is a discriminatory bill demonstrating government overreach, injecting itself between families and faith and patients and doctors. And as a reminder, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And if you look around, like you've been doing all day, we the people, we do not consent.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you very much for your testimony. Colin McNamara. Well,
good evening. Colin McNamara, Manchester, Connecticut. There's been a lot of talk about the HB 5044, but I haven't heard much talk about what it's going to be repealing, which is 10204A. And I just thought I'd mention the third clause. Any such child who presents a statement from parents or guardians of such child that such immunizations would be contrary to the religious beliefs of such child. It doesn't say the religious beliefs of the parent. It says of such child. And I have 3 children, and I don't think an infant has religious beliefs, but I know they do not like to be stabbed with needles, and it would definitely be contrary to the beliefs to allow that to happen. I'll just ask a few questions. How can we freely practice our religion when the state is trying to define it for us? How can we be safe in our persons when the state wants to stab us? If you boil down HB 5044 into one sentence, it would sound something like this. The government of Connecticut will inject whatever they deem necessary into your children's bodies, and if you do not consent, you will be thrown out of school. That doesn't sound like freedom to me, religious or any other kind. And it sounds to me like you're treating us like livestock. I have to ask, is it about herd immunity or is it herd mentality? Legislators, are you going to violate your oath to defend the Constitution and try to define our religion? Doctors, are you going to violate your Hippocratic oath and advocate individuals be stabbed against their wills and their beliefs? Is a child being stabbed against their will not a trauma? Is a trauma not a harm? I've spoken to my legislator several times, and he's told me that he has faith in the CDC, that he has faith in the AAP. It struck me as odd that he would use the word faith, a word that implies a position of trust where there isn't complete evidence. When he tells me that he doesn't know much about the vaccine issue, but he trusts the authorities, why does his faith in the doctors count for more than my faith in my Creator? Why should we trust the state when they're trying to strip us of our rights? If the Public Health Committee would like to take a real cause that is truly in the best interest of the public, might I suggest mandatory toothbrushing laws? For far too long, this country has suffered from great moral and oral decay, in the spirit and incisor. Our country's future depends on its ability to bite back. We can no longer be a nation indentured. Our very salvation is at stake. Thank you. Thanks for staying up late.
Oh, just a minute, sir. Are there any questions or comments? Representative Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for testifying. Were you talking about French people before? Sorry. Thank you.
I have to admit that the last paragraph is not my own. It's come from one of the greatest unsung political minds of our time, Vernon Supreme. He's a libertarian candidate for president. So enjoy. Thank you. Anything else?
Representative Michelle, were you done? Are you done? Oh, okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. Next is Ryan